year ago, and at the time DoorDash was new to my area. Not many people used it, but if you worked at the right times, you could still make well above minimum wage. It was a Friday night, and I got a request in the app to deliver to a house around 8 miles away. The house was on a deeply wooded back road, with absolutely no streetlights. Like, literally, if you turned your headlights off at this time of the night, you were completely blind. I delivered to a house in this area once before, but that was when it was light out, which, trust me, is a way different scene. I didn't have much for phone service, so it was difficult to find exactly where I needed to be. But after a while, I finally found the place. The house seemed pretty similar to a lot of the other houses in the area, secluded looking, and right on the edge of being able to comfortably call it abandoned. I pulled up to the house, and because of the limited visibility, I decided to keep my car's headlights on while I dropped off the food at the door. But to do this, I had to keep the keys in the ignition, and so I did. I figured it wouldn't be the end of the world if I left my car running for an extra 30 seconds. I took the bag of food to the front door. I knocked a few times, and waited about 20 seconds, when my phone went off. I was getting a call from a blocked caller ID. I decided to answer it in case it had anything to do with the food I was delivering. It was some man who sounded completely normal. He explained how he was the one who placed the DoorDash order, and he then asked me if I could just bring it to him around back. I was already sketched out as is, and so I told the guy no way. If he wanted his food, he needed to come to me up front. But to that, the line just went dead. I told myself I'd wait at the front door for one more minute, and if this guy didn't show up, I was just gonna leave. Maybe 30 seconds passed, and the guy did show up. The front door opened, and I looked at the dude. He was wearing a black ski mask, and was just standing there looking at me. I held out the food, but he made no reaction. That's when the guy yelled out, "Alright, now!" Right as he said this, 3 men, also wearing ski masks, came sprinting out from around the back of the house towards me. My flight reaction kicked in immediately, and I ran straight to my car. I opened the door, put it in drive, and had the pedal to the floor in no less than 2 seconds. The men were able to hit my car a good amount of times before I was able to drive off. With what, I don't know, but something strong enough to break my back passenger side window and make a few other dents. Not even a minute into driving off, and I got 2 back-to-back calls from a blocked caller ID that I can only assume were both from the same guy. I let both calls ring until they stopped. I was shaking uncontrollably and still struggling to regain my composure. But after a few minutes, I calmed down enough to call the police and report the incident. And that was that. I don't know what ended up happening, and I genuinely don't want to know. I've tried to distance myself from the whole situation as much as possible. It's beyond terrifying for me to imagine what those guys had planned for me that night. A part of me thinks it was just to rob me, but another part of me thinks they wanted to kidnap me, or worse. This happened back in 2019, on a Friday night in January. I had just gotten back from work, and was honestly way too tired to make my own food. I always heard good things about food delivery apps, and so I figured that night was the perfect night to finally download one and try it out. I just downloaded the first one that showed up. I then made an account, placed an order at a semi-nearby restaurant, and turned on Netflix to watch while I waited for it to arrive. Now, it's worth mentioning that on this night in particular, there was a lot of snow on the ground. The app said the delivery would take around 20 minutes, but I figured that didn't account for the terrible driving conditions. I honestly assumed it would probably take double that. I can't remember exactly how much time had passed, but it finally got to a point where I figured I'd just forget it and cancel the order. But right before I did, I got a message from the driver. Word for word, the message read, "Can't find your house. What's your personal phone number?" Now, you gotta remember, I had just downloaded the app that night, so I didn't know if it was common or not for drivers to ask for their customers' personal phone numbers. But I ended up giving it to him anyway. Around 10 minutes later, he would contact me, but not over a phone call like I expected. The guy texted me, saying he'd be at my place with the food in 10 minutes. This unsettled me a bit. I was under the impression he needed my phone number so he could call me and get better directions. But I just tried to brush it off. Around 10 minutes later, I would get another text saying he left the food on my doorstep. I went outside to get it and sent a text back thanking him. I figured that was that. But around midnight, I would get another text. It was the delivery driver. The text simply read, "I really liked your sweatshirt." This was now getting extremely weird, as the text suggested that the guy had stayed to watch me grab the food from my doorstep. I tried to play it cool, and responded with something like, "Haha, yeah, thanks. It's pretty nice." I can't remember everything that was said next, but it was some string of multiple texts that were something along the lines of, "So how's your night going? What are you up to?" and various other seemingly harmless messages. To these, I didn't respond. At the end of the day, I told myself I didn't know this guy, and I had no obligation to keep a conversation going. So, I just went to bed. But come morning, I would wake up to 20-something texts, and multiple missed calls all from the same number. It was again that same delivery driver. The last text was sent at 3 a.m., and as I scrolled through the texts, two in particular caught my eye. One of them read, "I'm outside your house," and the other said, "I can't see anything through your window. It's too dark." But that wasn't even the worst of it. I would later go outside to find footprints in the snow that I knew for a fact were not there the other day. Meaning, this guy wasn't joking. He had actually showed up to my house, and by the looks of the footprints had walked around it multiple times. I've since moved, and haven't received another text from the number. That was the first and only time I will ever use a food delivery app. I'm 27 and currently out of work. I recently got laid off at my job as the company I worked for was starting to go under. So, in an effort to keep up with the bills, I started delivering for Uber Eats part-time. A couple of my friends suggested it, and so I figured I'd give it a try until I found another job. To my surprise, it was actually good money. The only thing I didn't like was some of the places the app had me delivered to. I live in a city with a lot of sketchy areas. I try to stay away from those areas while delivering, but there's only so much you can do. This night, a Saturday, I got a McDonald's order. I usually don't accept those ones, but this night was strangely dead, which was weird. Saturday nights are usually the busiest for Uber Eats. Anyway, I pick up the order and start heading towards the address I'm given. Instantly, I realized it was not in the best area, but by this point, I decided to just suck it up. I pulled up to the house, and right away the vibe was off. It was completely dark with not a single light on in the house. Usually there's at least a light on upstairs, or something that would signal someone being awake and waiting for their order. But the house seemed dead. Nevertheless, I put the car in park, turned off the engine, grabbed the order, and started walking towards the door. I walked onto the porch, and as I reached for the front door, I saw it. The door was slightly cracked open. I knocked, and as I did, the door opened slightly more. I yelled out that I had an Uber Eats order, and right away some man walked to the front door, like as if he had just been waiting right there. As he got closer, I got a good look at him. Now, I'm not one to judge a person by their physical appearance, but this guy was practically covered head to toe in tattoos. The guy looked extremely intimidating, definitely not someone you'd want to mess with. He had this look of frustration, or almost anger on his face. He was staring at me dead in the eyes,